Hmm. Hello, I thought I could catch that before we actually went live. Welcome to our live masterclass. Today we are discussing relationships as they form and connect to the concept of the refusal and, more importantly, the beliefs that equal blocks. I'm Janice Taylor. I'm the founder of AHA Healing. It's been quite a journey of putting this entire theory together and really looking at theories before me. Developing AHA Healing has been a labor of love, as I've maintained a day job while I was behind the scenes, really looking at everything from love that I wanted, healing from a divorce that I had, to my own parents that had divorced and that trauma, and spent this whole time period trying to get to the core root of what happens to all of us. All of us experience this emotional pain. And so this weekly masterclass is to get to the core root of what's really happening in our relationships. How are we functioning in them? What happens in this conflict and tension? And I don't know about you, but lately, everywhere in the world, it seems like the whole world's just getting flipped upside down and twisted around and trying to understand what's really happening to all of us. So welcome to this Wednesday's class. Remember, we go every Wednesday and every Friday in our masterclass. So Fridays is Finding Faith. Today, it is about relationships and the beliefs. So let's dive in. Let's get started, and I'm going to pop open this deck and away we go. So if this is your first time here, you may or may not have seen this part of the introduction. If this is a repeat for you, I apologize, but I always think that there's something new and exciting to come every single time. So if this is your first time here, you will know a little bit about me. My education and background is psychology, but I've been a tech founder the last 14 years at 3 different tech companies. My first tech company was across professional sports, music, and then I went into the entertainment industry as well. By day, I'm running a tech company. By night, I was starting to work with humans. I started working with women in recovery. Then I moved into working with the celebrity community while I was still holding my quote unquote day job. Wrote a book during that time period, was really excited to be honored with an appointed honorary captain of the Royal Canadian Navy. I've had all of these experiences. But most importantly for you that is watching of this is like, why do I think I'm the person to deliver this message? Well, I'm not always sure that I am, but I will say that I have dedicated much of the last 30 years of my life behind the scenes, getting to the core root of understanding my true self. And most importantly, wanted to get to the core root of my pain. I wanted, just like everybody else wanted, I wanted love, I wanted understanding, I wanted to feel the freedom of what it was like to be healed. So I went on this journey. I am at Harvard in January to begin to write this thesis as well. So this is what's happening in the world. I call this the silent suffering because I think that when we think of mental health, for example, we think diagnosis. You've gone to a psychologist, you've potentially gone to a psychiatrist, and they've said, okay, you have depression, or you have anxiety, or you have ADHD, or you have bipolar, whatever it is. We are in love with a diagnosis. We all want one now. Before, nobody wanted to talk about it. Now, every other person is describing themselves according to this diagnosis. But there is a silent suffering of all those in between. So when we say mental health, we really talk about emotional health. And that's where I believe that much of our suffering is currently in our world. That's where we're living. We're living in this emotional pain points. And I think the most prominent place that this is showing up is in our relationships, in our pursuit of love. And that part of it really is, it says 1 in 4, but we think it could be more like 1 in 2. There is a silent suffering happening to all of this. And it's important to get to the core roots of what's going on with that. So prior to your 10th birthday, if you are alive and well today watching this and happen to be over the age of 18, even if you're in those teen years and trying to piece together some relationships that you're looking to have, Every human has a wound prior to their 10th birthday. It's like a crack in the spirit. I love this picture with the lightning bolt because that's kind of what happens to the spirit. It's like a jolt. And sometimes that is repeated traumas after that, a jolt. Sometimes there's different degrees to trauma. Right now in our society, we love to trauma score. Well, my trauma is more than yours, or mine too, or what about mine? Mine's here. Every event ends up being about that person's trauma or how you've stepped on the bomb of their trauma and their wound. But it's a wound and it's a psychic break. And 99.9% of the world has one. If you believe you don't have one, your ego's just in the way, because everyone does. I know it's harsh, but it's just true. Doesn't mean that your parents were bad or you had to have this sort of rocketing, riveting trauma event that was so catastrophic. But a wound to the spirit as a child is like lightning. It is like a break, like, whoa, this world isn't about love. That's the first time that we start to go, well, this is the world I could be afraid of. This is the darkness. This is what is going on. And when you have the wound as a child, and you're going to learn about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're not familiar with that, everybody's kind of dropped that even in pop culture, and pop psychology is alluded to what that means. But essentially, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you have that break in the spirit, the wound, a thorn enters. And it's a thorn. It's like a sliver, could be a giant bolt of a thorn, could be like this rose of a thorn. It's a thorn. And when you have your emotional break, that thorn enters that wound and stays there. It's like locked in place. Now you continue within time because time carries on, and you could go from being a 5-year-old to 10 to 20 to 30 to maybe 40 or 50 or however old you are now watching this. Your life carries on. It doesn't mean because you carried on that the thorn doesn't exist. You may not remember it. You may not give it any kind of weight. You may not even consider it because you think your brain is so powerful and you're so powerful in your head that this thorn doesn't exist. Or you'll do what a lot of people do. They go fact finding. Well, I need the facts. Give me the facts. I need the meat and the information in order to say I have this wound and this thorn in my body. Do a timeout on all of that. It's not going to help you. More data and all of that is not necessarily going to help you. We just have to stay with the fact that 99% of the world has a wound and a thorn entered that at love and belonging in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And until you heal this wound, chances are you've married someone or in relationship or trying to date someone who still has this wound and thorn. And if you're not aware of it at your own peril, that's on you. Because once you know it, we always say here, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it doesn't matter what somebody says. It's in the behavior. It's in the actions. It's in the reactions. It's in the responses. Emotional pain just shows up because this is what it's like. On the surface, someone could be like, I'm solid. I'm good. I'm good. Like, look at me. I'm awesome. But if we don't acknowledge that there is this pain always underneath, always there, like an undercurrent, people drive into icebergs with human beings all the time. Sometimes we know we are, like we're poking the bear. Other times it's innocuous. We just accidentally step on their pain point. Boom, there's all this irrational activation. Sometimes it's on purpose. I believe in the divinity of that. Sometimes you can meet someone and they can make you so activated that maybe that's a good thing, because maybe we need to chip at this iceberg and this pain needs to leave the body. But it's the most pronounced, the more emotional we are. So when you are in relationship and looking to be in love, that iceberg is like bump, 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 crash, crash. You're just smacking into each other. Doesn't matter if you're dating, doesn't matter if you've been married for 20 years. Sometimes you'll just learn how to circumvent it and walk around it or avoid it. But ultimately, this is the, for lack of a better term, volcano that exists in every human being. Every human being has pushed pain down in their body because they don't want to feel it, because they don't want to wake up and just face it and to look at it and say, I have this pain in my body and it makes me do things that I otherwise in my rational brain don't want to do, but here I am. Here I am again. And so I made this table because I felt that this was the best way to describe what happens to all of us. Every human being, we are two halves. Think about 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 hands, 2 arms, 2 legs. We're kind of split down the middle. We have 2 sides of our brain. We have the sun, the moon. We have everything in this constant constraint of opposite, right, left. But if you think about the human experience, I wanted to distill all of the vernacular, and there's a lot, and I didn't get through all of it, and by all means did not get through all of it. But people love a semantic debate. We argue over words and we stay in this really low vibrational. Well, you're not really saying this. Well, maybe we should say it like this. Well, no, you need to say it like this. And so in psychology, they have their way of defining it. If you look at what happens in biology, they have a way. Religion has a way. Everyone has a way to kind of describe more or less the same thing. So this is how I distilled the human experience to think about ourselves like a piano. Is you have 2 voices. Those 2 voices are at all times competing in your brain for your attention. They are 2 voices that are always looking for you to say, no, look here, look here. And they're the opposites of each other. And if you think about yourself like the moon, you have the dark side and the light side. And you have an ego side and you have a soul side. And the ego wants you to live in fear and the soul wants you to live in love. You have pain that happened that turned this ego machine on, sometimes before you even had language, and it's been ruling your life. And that ego voice will send you to the depths of fucking hell. It just will. It will send you to darkness and have you believe that everything you should be afraid of, don't trust, don't look. It can keep you in such a state of shock and also fight or flight that your system is so overactivated that you're just terrified of what's around the next corner. That emotional pain point sets the system in motion. Now, this was something that I really wanted to get to the roots of, because we often think that this emotional pain creates a symptom and then you get a diagnosis. That's typically what happens. You go to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, you tell them about an event, you tell them about how you're feeling, they explain more scenarios, they collect more data, they may give you a prescription, and they may tell you, hey, you have depression. And that may be true, but it's only a portion of what may be true. There are so many other permutations of what is actually happening. So I went and I traveled, okay, well, what happens to us as human beings when we experience this emotional pain point? When you experience your emotional pain point, 3 things happen simultaneously at the exact same time that a child's not even aware that it's kicked in gear. It's like turning the furnace on, turning this system on. The first thing is that the ego starts to tell you that you're not worthy of love. See, this world isn't about love. I told you so. Look at your parents. They're not taking care of you. See, not about love. And it's like this slippery little sucker that's whispering in your ear, often when you're a child, that you're not worthy of love. The second thing that happens is you learn your codependent triangulation. So the ego says, well, if you just be quiet, then you're going to be loved. See, if you change who you are, then you'll get love. And the agenda for children and babies is to be loved. That's what the agenda is. We want to be fed, we want to be watered, and then we want to be loved. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so what happens is you start to change who you are to assume the position. And that's your codependent triangulation. And that's the first addictive state that humans get into, is human addiction, living in this codependent triangulation of human behavior so that we don't ever feel pain again. And we carve out this storytelling and these illusions that this is actually the truth. My mother's this, my father's this. We blame, we shame, and we tell ourselves these stories, all so that we never have to face the pain of what happened to us. The third thing that happens, it's called your EKG. Now, most people like to say, oh, just change your vibrational frequency. It's such bullshit. You can't change your vibrational frequency unless you pluck out the thorn, because the thorn is like an antenna. It's stuck there. It has its own vibrational pull. It's trying to, first leave the body, And in order to leave the body, it brings you more pain. And it's kind of its own attraction. It's its own spidey senses. And as long as that thorn is stuck in your emotional being before you're 10 years old, you're going to keep attracting the same type of people in your relationships, which makes it highly toxic and completely counterintuitive. Now, while the system of dark is running your life in response to pain, you have a system of the soul that's also running and trying to get your attention. The soul at your birth wanted you to know that you were always loved. You were just loved at your birth, period. Unconditional love, your birthright. The second thing, which is what we created here at AHA Healing, is the golden triangle. What is the golden triangle? Well, if my codependent triangle looks like this, what's its opposite? And then from there, if I pluck out this thorn, what's my actual EKG? What am I really vibrating to? And so this is the silent addiction that is killing most relationships, killing most workplaces, killing many father-daughter family relationships, sibling relationships. This is what is driven in social media. This is why the cultural unrest is so high. I put my money and my life on this, is that codependent addiction is this constant swirl of blaming and shaming other human beings for how you feel in perpetuity, different cast of characters, different people, same scenario. So this is how it looks. If someone's irrationally coming at you saying, you did this to me, you're this person, why don't you do X, Y, and Z? This is what you need to know. You're not the first person they've done this to, under no circumstances. In fact, the first person that they learned to blame and shame was the person that first inflicted the pain. You repeat the pattern over and over and over again until you've had enough of it. Now, if you show up in your life as the perpetrator, for example, you will bring victims and martyrs to you. That's just the laws of attraction in your codependent addiction, which everybody has. If you're a victim, you bring perpetrators and martyr. If you're a martyr, you bring perpetrators and victim. Rinse and repeat. Everyone has the potential to be all of these roles at different points, but the more interesting part of it is to see what are they most dominant? What is their knee-jerk reaction to be? If someone comes to them and says, hey, I need you to do this, do they attack? Do they immediately go to a perpetrator syndrome? I had a situation today, immediately, the person went to their perpetrator syndrome. It was totally innocuous. I stepped on their bomb and boom, they're right there being that person again, just attacking and inflicting pain. That's all they know how to do. And it's because you've threatened, unbeknownst to you, that sanctity of this condition. This is a conditioned response to emotional pain. And it was the way that a child is conditioned to survive it. I have to survive this pain. And so if I show up as a good girl, martyr, then things will be quiet in the house and my parents won't fight and then there'll be love. If I show up as a victim, meaning, oh, the world is always happening to me. Why is this always happening to me? Martyrs come into my life and take care of me. Perpetrators, let's just mess things up. I got to knock things out. Let's be chaos. Let's inflict pain because I got to get this pain out of me. And so this is a hot potato and it is a hot mess. And it is a silent addiction because humans don't even know that everyone lives in this to some degree. Everyone. And when you're emotional and you feel slightly out of control, which is what relationships do to us, they threaten that inner sanctity. We don't want that threatened. We think it's keeping us safe, and the opposite is true. In our codependent triangle, the thing that is most profound to understand in relationships is that we believe part of the condition and the psychosis of this is we believe other people are responsible for our behavior. We believe that they have power. We believe that they have the power to inflict pain on us. They also have the power to heal us and give us love, as though this person that's showing up in your life is giving you the love that you didn't have. But here's the gig. They can't give you love. they can show you love, but they can't give it to you. You already have it. It's already your birthright. They just come alongside you. But when we believe that someone's either giving or taking or blaming or shaming, we eliminate God from the equation. And I say, God, please use the language that fits for you, universe, what have you. When you believe that humans have this rare power, we don't listen to our inner voice. We don't listen to our inner soul. We don't rely on the all connection of all-knowing being, as Carl Jung would say. We don't have faith in ourselves. We put our faith in humans. And guess what? They will drop that ball all the time. All the time. Humans are infallible. They make a million mistakes. We are not responsible for another person's sense of love. We can show love, but at the end of the day, it's an inside job. But when you break that and you have that wound that's alive and that thorn and that ego voice, do you see how it's a system? It just builds on each other. One thing builds from the next thing that builds to the next thing. And before you know it, there's just no God and just a whole lot of toxic triangulated addiction. So at the core root of all of this in our relationships, we seek relationships because we're ultimately seeking for the validation that we are loved. And so we look for our relationships to show us that, prove it to us, and become that. We don't necessarily seek our relationships to have just a free-flowing expression of love, to show someone love, that it's already yours. We put so much pressure and weight on this other person to solve the very pain point, which is the belief, and this is where your beliefs are challenged, that you're unworthy of love. You seek the answer outside of yourself. You seek the answer from other people. Other people, you're like, if he dates me, if he marries me, if he loves me, if she shows me this, if she does this, then she loves me. You're constantly in this vortex. They will not be able to solve that for you. And I know that sucks. But at the end of the day, humans are meant to be enjoyed, not controlled, not manipulated. We're not here to blame and shame each other out of the oblivion so that we're quiet and we're silenced. The belief that we are unworthy of love is what separates us from God and faith. The belief that we are so unworthy of love that these bad things happen to us, that we believed we deserved them. We didn't deserve them. Those humans didn't deserve it when they had their pain point, rinse and repeat in generational trauma. But when we're in that state, there is no God in it. And that's where it gets really problematic. So here at Aha Healing, we want to transform this pain and move it to the light side of the moon. We want to move it to transforming pain. You don't just survive pain and white knuckle pain. That's completely fallacy. You transform pain. You evolve it, you elevate it, you face it, you deal it, you feel the feelings that you didn't get to feel, you mourn it, you grieve it, and you move forward with it. And then you realize that it's the very ingredients for your higher calling. So when I was putting this theory together, I looked across all the spectrum. Again, my roots are psychology. I didn't grow up in a faith environment. I didn't go to church. That was not part of our life. My mother said the God she knew wouldn't give her the life she had, and that was the end of it. But I did look across all these different theories, like from Carl Jung to Abraham Maslow. I wanted to look at religious studies, so I started to read parts of the Bible just to understand it. I wanted to get to the sense of what are all of this academic theory really saying? What are they really saying? And could I extract from each of them, like leaves on a tree, that we could get to the emotional root that bounds all of us together? If you think of yourself like the 4 quadrants of the self, you can't just live in one quadrant and expect to experience love, unconditional love, peace. We need the balance of the 4 quadrants of the self. When we live so much in our mental, which we do right now, so much in our head, so much in our codependent triangulation, so much in the physical. Everything is physically right now, like what's happening now. We're just getting hit with it constantly in social media. It's like now. We're just overwhelmed. that it quiets the spiritual aspect of our life, which you can't be in a healthy relationship without the spirit and the soul. You just can't be. It's an impossibility. And you can't really be in a true loving state of a relationship if your emotional woundedness is in charge of your life. So we need to balance the 4 quadrants. And this is why I put all of this together. So we are right now in our weekly sessions of our masterclasses, we are at refusal. See, people will say to me all the time, I really want love. And I'll be like, really? Do you believe in love? No, I don't believe in love. Oh, do you believe that, people can be faithful? No, God, no. They're all cheating bastards. Okay, what do you believe about relationships? I don't know, but I want to have love. Okay, well, we need to get to the sense of what are you actually refusing? And see, the refusal lives in the subconscious parts of our brain. And so if you want love and you want to bring love to you and you want partnership, then we have to deal with your belief structure. We have to deal with the core defense mechanisms that's keeping you from love. So whenever I listen to these experts on, Instagram or YouTube or whatever about relationships, it's always involved some level of manipulation, some level of the ego, some level of, my partner has to be this, this, and this. And if they're not this, then I'm not playing. This is not happening. These are all defense mechanisms because we ultimately are keeping love from ourselves. And if you read the book that Sally Field wrote, it was actually really, really beautiful on her biography. She talked about how the things she had to overcome the most was really these defense mechanisms. And when you connect your defense mechanisms to your beliefs, to your wound, to your thorn, to your emotional being, then you realize that the only person that can ultimately decide to change your mind is you. I can tell you all this information and you can choose to reject it, or you can choose to explore it or be curious about it. But ultimately, only you can decide to face your inner truth, to face these beliefs. When you think about your emotional pain, we wrapped our emotional pain in a concrete bed of beliefs, and we threw them to the bottom of ourselves. We threw them to the ocean and said, go live there. Like, sit your ass down in there. That's it. But what we really want, we don't realize that that's still alive in us because we think we're over it, or we think because we've forgotten it. But the thing to understand about this, when you have this system of emotional pain that we've talked about, when you have this thorn, when you have the wound, when you throw to the bottom of the self, your concrete bed of that, there's an injury to 2 things that deeply, deeply impact your ability to have a relationship that's healthy. The first one is genuine empathy. Again, Abraham Maslow, the father of humanistic psychology, the levels of empathy. Can I be empathic with the very wound I had? Can I own that wound, but can I feel empathy for the self? People always say, well, I'm empathic for everybody else but myself. Bullshit. You can't be. You may have the illusion that you are. You may be sacrificing yourself as a martyr and saying, look at what you give up for everyone. That's not actual empathy. Empathy is the genuine feeling of knowing, of the ability to mourn something that you first didn't get. And when you have your pain and you build these defense mechanisms, you reject that you ever had pain. You don't want to feel it. You don't want to just be with it. Without story, without blocking it, without minimizing it, without repressing it, all of those things. We just can't be with the emotional capacity to just feel it. And now more than ever in our society, if we live in Silicon Valley, which I lived, and in social media, what a nightmare. The thing that it attacks the most in all of the social media Pavlovian system that we've chosen to have our social discourse in is empathy. We don't really have genuine empathy. We take sides, and then we think we're empathic to a side. But what we don't realize is that empathy is not based on a side, political or otherwise. It's empathy, period. It's recognizing that you yourself have a wound, and if you have a wound, so do others. And the only way to heal the wound is to first own that you have one. Now, the second part of the woundedness that happens during that emotional pain point is the inability to delay gratification. And this is so important to understand, because if you look at social media and in particularly dating apps, there is nothing in there that about delaying gratification. We are like swipe, 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 next, new person. We can't be uncomfortable in our feelings. And so the inability to be in our bodies with our feelings and just own them makes it very difficult to actually have a healthy relationship, because you're always looking for something outside of yourself. You're always preparing for the bomb to drop. You're always looking for something to be wrong. And if that person's not right, you're looking for the next one because someone's going to do it better and show you love. Rinse and repeat. This is a pattern that goes on and on and on. Serial daters, people that go from one relationship to the next, and they're married, and then they're divorced, and then they're married, and they're divorced. Human addiction is just like that, because the inability, which is an injury that happens in emotional pain, is we are unable to delay any type of gratification, which means we can't be uncomfortable. We just can't be in our feelings. Can't be. It's hard. And if you can't be in your feelings, you're in someone else's. And if you're in someone else's feelings, that's where toxic triangulation leaves. So they're hard to change because of these defense mechanisms. We form defense mechanisms to prevent us from having pain. And so these are just a sample of the top 10 sort of defense mechanisms. You probably witnessed this in your relationship. I guarantee you, as soon as you rub up against someone, they are like pushing right back into some level of their defense mechanisms. This is very, very common. They either deny they even have anything about it, or they repress them, or right now we are loving the intellectualization of a defense mechanism. It means I'm going to pick at everything semantically. I'm going to argue with you, and I'm going to want the details, and that's how I'm going to protect myself from actually feeling pain. I'm going to intellectualize it. I call it the intellectual weapon. Are we going to have intellectual warfare and debate over the words? If this is an hour long, so probably in here someone's going picking apart, oh, it's got to be this, it's this. So she didn't say it like this. She should say it like this. That's called a defense mechanism of intellectualization, which means you just don't even want to look at any part of this as the truth. It's just like, boom. And you see that very, very often in our human discourse right now. And so if you think about the origins of this, I loved this quote because it really was multifaceted. So all religions, arts, and science are branches of the same tree. I'm like, hallelujah. See, you could be an elm tree and your partner could be an evergreen, and you still can live in the same house, because at your roots, we're all roots. We're all roots of the tree. One could be this way, one could go this way, one could go this way, one could go that way. But at the end of the day, all of these in man's life are in our roots. And I love that when we think about this. So when we're looking at our humanity, we all have these root stories, and at our roots is where we really are all the same. So from a psychological perspective, I thought this definition was really useful. So trauma beliefs are cultural. They're family learned, and they're reinforced by our friends, who likely also have unhealed childhood PTSD. We usually know what we're doing wrong, and we can try to make ourselves act normal, but this kind of symptom fix is usually only temporary. These traumas predict our relationships. Now, I just want you to stay with this for a minute and just be with this. This is a hard one for people that have defense mechanisms, for people that don't want to look at that they have emotional pain, and that their emotional pain is potentially in charge of all of their relationships. But they actually are very predictive. Your codependent triangulation is very predictive. It's where you feel comforted, comfortable, in control. It's an illusion, but it's still where you want to live. You prefer to be with someone that's your martyr or your perpetrator if you're the victim, because changing the self is an unknown territory for you. Healing this wound, you don't know how to live on the light side of the moon. So you choose to stay. And we often then stay in relationships that are toxic, that are unhealthy, but we're bonding over our belief structure. We reinforce each other's beliefs. You know, misery loves company is because we feel comfortable when we have other people reflecting back to us what we want to be true, but isn't necessarily good for us and it's not necessarily true. So the radical accountability that we need in order to heal isn't something that is really part of our life. And all of this led to my epiphany that perhaps we married our pain and we dated our pain and we kept dating our pain, and in many cases continue to marry our pain until we go and heal our own pain. When we stop expecting other human beings to solve that for us. So from a religious perspective, belief is a state of mind, and the things that we cannot see. That's really what religion is asking us to do in many cases. It's asking us to believe in something that we may not have totally right or be 100% about, because there's different perspectives of maybe the same thing. So if you look at it from a Christian perspective to a Jewish perspective to a Mormon perspective to Islam perspective, you name it. So we all want to be so right as human beings, and we create that defense mechanism again. But ultimately, what all of them have in common is that the belief is really in something we cannot see, and we may not be 100% sure, and we're perfectly okay with it. See, we can't be in love and in relationships without this core sense of believing in things we cannot see, because otherwise we suffocate a relationship and we try to control it and we manipulate it and we take all the fun and love and joy out of it. And when we try to do that, we really just stifle the relationships. Worse is some people use religion to manipulate relationships. Oh, look at what the book says. You must follow this book, this book. These are the rules, which again, you're just a human. I'm not so sure that you're responsible to be able to say that. But ultimately, it's our job to heal, and it's our job to do the inner walk. And then we can potentially believe in something that we cannot see. I love the philosophy's perspective of beliefs, because I thought, let's look at them all. Let's all see, what are they saying? Psychology, we know that our beliefs can be formed and bonded in trauma. In religion, we know that our beliefs are in something that we can't always 100% be sure of, but we allow a certain amount of latitude for things we cannot see. In the philosophy perspective, it's very much saying that our belief is T, and if I see Y, then I can believe in X. Like, this is how we function. But if it's not obvious to us, we will either reject P. I'm not going to believe that. So if it's not clearly obvious in your logic right away, you're going to reject it, or you're going to suspend your judgment on it. And in those cases, we need to say, well, in either way of us as human beings, so religion, philosophy, psychology, it's really a gentle discussion for you to have within yourself to ask the ultimate question of whether this belief serves you now. So these roles become further embedded in our life, in our addictive state, because we give a belief structure to them. And we give a story to the formation of those, a belief so strongly that we tell this story over and over again. My father is X, my mother is this, my partner is this, and we lock onto these beliefs. And then we lock onto the beliefs of ourselves. Well, I'm not capable of that. Well, the devil is better than one you don't. I don't think I'm lovable. I don't think that's going to happen for me. I literally went all the way to Bali only for someone to say, I don't think you're possible for you to be loved. I'm like, what? I saw a therapist. She's like, you're going to be really hard to love because you're too strong. That's what she told me. I was like, for fuck's sakes. Everywhere I went, it was like someone was saying a new thing like that. And I thought, what's with this belief? It's beliefs of others that are pressed onto me that then could ring true in a story I was telling myself. My mother said, all men were bastards. And all these beliefs that we have about human beings is really what we have about ourselves and what we're willing to say goodbye to and what we're willing to mourn. And so these beliefs do become blocks. They block us from the things that we really want. And we're not honest about what we really want because we don't even know how to be honest with what we want. And that continues this entire perspective. And so when you're thinking about this, from all of this, I wanted to get to this graph with Abraham Maslow. Remember, your thorn is stuck here, somewhere around love and belonging. Once this has happened and inflicted, the trauma can live in these physiological needs without a shadow of a doubt, and the safety and security. But most often it gets stuck somewhere right in here, which then impacts our sense of self-esteem, which often impacts our ability to get to self-actualization. And this was all the epiphany, that I realized that what we learn in society about love and relationships, that it's really addiction. There's the go away, come closer, go away, come closer. He's just not that into you. Every single movie has it like, oh, he loved you anyway. Even though you were the dull friend, you were really his love match. Like everything about it is so psychotic in so many different ways, because it's just breeding this ground of addiction that really humans and relationships need to have all this fire and passion, or tearing each other apart and the coming together, like the highs, the lows, the roller coaster. And true love is not like that. And so right now at this point, it's really a matter of you asking, what are you willing to say goodbye to? And that's really the ultimate question on our beliefs. We do something here that's called the Miracle Writing Project for 30 days to deal with the refusal, which is a really internal therapeutic process. Because the question is what is no longer serving you today? Not who you were 5 years ago, or 5 minutes, or 10 years, not your relationship when you were 20s and now you're 50, not any of that past stuff. The question is, what serves you now? Who do you want now? What do you want now? And if any part of you is limited in that regard, saying, oh, love's just not for me. Oh, you're too strong. You're too strong. You're never going to be. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is, we must face it. It is the beast in many cases, and it is the block that is alive. And so we have to allow ourselves to believe in new truth. And that's hard for people. Most people don't want to do that. Most of us don't want to look at that. Most of us really genuinely find it hard. And we find it hard because the trauma and the pain was so intense. And so we need to grieve. We need to grieve the loss. We need to love and bless what did protect us for the time period that it was here. And just because it protected you as a child isn't something to blame or shame. Now it's just a matter of to say, what do you want now? So when we were putting this program together, I wanted to build like the exact steps. I'm like, we have a manual for everything, but we don't for relationships, which is pretty effed up when you think about it, because they're the complex and hard and difficult. And we don't even know the language of ourselves, let alone the love language of someone else. And besides that fact, don't do a love language until you've healed, because you don't know what your love language is yet. You know what your codependency is, but you don't necessarily know what your true self wants. And you won't know that until you've plucked out the thorn and healed it. Like all that other stuff is just Band-Aid on a gorge. If it hasn't taught you to actually pluck out this thorn and heal this root, it's not going to fucking matter. And I'm sorry that I'm swearing about that. It's just truth. It's just truth. This is the path and the map that you need in order to pluck out the root so you can heal, pluck out that thorn so you can heal the root, and then have the playbook of understanding of what it really means to be in a relationship. So these are some of the areas you will go through. Everything is step by step. We did 12 steps and 3 phases in an exactly systematic way. I was like knocking this through. I was like, give me the playbook. So this will work for anybody that is single, married, divorced, going through a breakup, looking for love. Every scenario. We cannot avoid human relationships. We're humans. Humans live in relationship. That's what makes us human. We're social creatures. We, in our hearts, want love. We all do. And when we're honest about that, then we can get what we really want. So you will do your love inventory. You will learn to say goodbye through this refusal. This refusal is intense. It really is intense. We've worked with a lot of people. Here is a few of our testimonials. I'm happy to take a call with you. If you'd like our Calendly, you can head to our website. It's really a transformative process. And I'll tell you that this has been a 30-year journey for me. I was divorced. I'm now happily married in total love with my partner. The thing about this, and even when I was meeting Matthew, I knew I couldn't accept him until I did this work. I wouldn't have noticed him. I wouldn't have recognized what love looked like. I was so in my what I thought I believed to be true and my pain and my codependency that I couldn't even see what it would be like to be loved. Just as I am. Not prettier, skinnier, not any of those things, not richer, wealthier, not in a different house, not in a different location, not in Bali, not in Alaska. Did all of that to come to this extraordinary epiphany. And this epiphany began when I decided to really put pen to paper and write this theory out. Ahava actually is the Hebrew word to give love, it's the giving of love. And I thought, what if the aha, the crack in the spirit, the way to get through it, can we make a map? And we did. We made a full map. These are some of the 12 steps. And so this is the parable for today, is to say goodbye to all that no longer serves you. Now, if you believe in religion or in the Bible, God says, fear not 365 times. And I think that that's one for each day. I love the symbolism of that. And so when you say goodbye to all that no longer serves you, it's all these beliefs that may or may not serve you now. They may have previously, they may not serve you now. And if love is what you want, genuine partnership, parallel, healthy love, not toxic triangulation, codependent, forget all of that. You must be willing to say goodbye. So here is the book we are reading this week. This book is called The Primal Wound. I really loved this book. It's so beautiful. The way they put this together, it's kind of like post-Abraham Maslow. It touches into transpersonal psychology, but I felt it gave the best description of this inner wounded state. And when you understand your inner wound and your partner's inner wound and your children's inner wound and your young people's inner wound and your coworkers' inner wound, when you understand the inner wound, you can understand human beings far, far, far differently. So, of course, there's my book there for you. If you accept a limiting belief, then it will become a truth for you. I love this quote. It really will. I love Keanu Reeves. He's so terrific. He's one of our nice Canadians. And Keanu Reeves said once that 1 + 1 = 5. You're right. Because if you want that to be a truth, who are we to say that? Who are we to teach you any differently? Who are we to try to convince you otherwise? But you have to decide that 1 + 1 is not equal 5, but only you can decide that. You are the one with the full power, with the full understanding, with the full God-given soul inside of you that has everything you need inside of yourself to heal. But you cannot heal without soul and God and the spirit. It is not a head exercise. It's an emotional, spiritual exercise. And if you want love, we need to tap into those quadrants of your emotional and spiritual. Love is not of the head. It is of the heart. It is of the soul. So if you would like to begin today, this revolutionary change, you can go to this website. It's here for you. You can start the course today. We have a wonderful Christmas special going on. If you don't, just show up here every Wednesday and Friday, and we'll continue to do this together. But if you head there, it will be the first step on this journey for you to get very clear. You just need a map and a will and a desire. A will and a desire. So you have two choices. Stay the same. That's okay. Perfectly fine. Or you could look at our special offer. And here's another place for our special offer that you can go and grab. So the question is, what do you want? And are you willing to give yourself a shot? Really? That's the question. Stay with that question today. Sit with it. What do you want? And are you willing to give yourself a shot? And are you willing to say goodbye? So for those that are still here, As I mentioned, every Wednesday, we will address a new topic in relationships. These are free for you. Please come check them out. Our courses are here. If you go to our website, ahahealing.online, 2 H's, no dash, ahahealing.online. When you go there, you will see the different courses. Every Friday, we do Finding Faith Friday because we believe that by finding faith, you can also find your connection to your spirit and soul. And by finding your faith, you can then have the relationship that you long for and that you are ready for. And so this is what I want to leave you with. Believe in love. Believe in it. It's possible. It's here. It's your birthright. Learn to love the self unconditionally. Tap into that golden reservoir that exists within yourself. Travel to it. Take our map. Our map will lead you right to it, right to the thorn. So you can pluck the thorn out so the root can lie back down, so you can become the tree that you were always meant to be. That's all for this week. We'll see you Friday or next week if you check out our relationship class next week. Bye for now.